and I've taught for years and years and years. And the one thing the way I like to talk to people is because I've learned a lot from my students. I learn more from my students than they probably learn from me. But what I really try to do when I talk to people is to try to help you kind of reorganize the way you're thinking about your art, because most people approach their art wrong, in the wrong direction. Okay? Number one, people are always, they're not being very nice to themselves. They're not kind to themselves. Okay? It's like you hear, well, I'm no good, my painting's awful, this just isn't working. You hear all those things from people, and it's just the wrong way to approach art, you know. So I'm going to go through some things that might help you at least rethink your thinking, you know. It's not that everybody, you know, everybody is an individual. Your art is your art. You know, it doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter if it's sellable. If it doesn't matter, none of that matters. What I want you to do is to enjoy what you're doing. Because why else would you do it? Okay? And you want to find that spot where it's enjoyable. And I learn something every day. I learn from my students. I learn from reading. I learn from watching YouTube. I try to learn something new every day. For those of people who think they've already known it all, well, you're not going to grow, because growth comes from learning. So we're going to go through this little exercise of rethinking your thinking. And what does that mean? Okay? What we do is we have a tendency to box ourselves into very tight thinking. Okay? That this is the way you're supposed to do it. Okay? So we lock ourselves in and we limit our growth, okay? Totally limiting our growth. So, I can take this off the screen. Hope that doesn't do anything. Okay. How do I put it? There. So this is a really important statement. Every time man makes a new experiment, he always learns more. He does not learn less. And why people don't want to learn more, I have no idea. You have to keep your mind open to new ideas in two directions and just keep it open. It doesn't mean that it has to apply to your artwork. It doesn't have to apply to the way you're thinking. It's just learning something new. That's the most important part. It's not about being the best. It's about being better than you were yesterday. I see people who, you know, this isn't the Middle Ages where you flog yourself going, mea culpa, maxima culpa, you know, I just am a failure, I'll never do this. But people do that every day in my classes, and why? What you want to do is you want to learn to enjoy what you're doing. It's the process of learning. And I watch a lot of little kids. I love little kids, and I love to watch the way they paint it. And I used to teach down at the Boca Museum School of Art, which on weekends they have all the kids come and do classes. And I used to teach on Mondays, and I loved it when they came in and I looked at their artwork on the wall. Their artwork has so much joy in it, and it's because they're not you know, beating themselves up constantly. You know, when we talk more about the abstraction part, you know, kids just do it. They just, I have to instruct adults how to be a kid. You know, kids know how to be a kid. And that's how you should approach your art, more from the mind of a child. Okay? And you're going to see some of that. So what you want to do is you want to start looking in your life in general, everything in the terms of what if. A what if is, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I painted it green? What if I tore it up? What if I burned it? What if I did this? Because each one of those steps is a step towards greater creativity in your work. And not saying, this is the way my painting is going to be. Because one thing we're going to talk a little later on is how to rethink the way you look at your painting. Okay? Because you're going to look at more of the process of painting than the actual physical part of painting, which is different. Okay? So the what ifs are these, just so you understand what a what if is. So this is my idea. Let's say you have an idea and a concept of what you're going to paint or what you want to do. This is the concept. A natural environment influences our aesthetic view of the world. So it's more about environment. It's more about things like that. So it can be very general, it can be very specific, but then these are influences. So then you're thinking about, well, what if I took it more from the viewpoint of human organizing his living? So basically, that looks like a lot like the branch of a tree. It looks like a tree, okay? So you're thinking beyond the tree. Just hang on, because this is all going to make sense at the end. So you're thinking of all the different alternatives there are. So then what I might do is I might combine some of those thoughts of the tree and start sketching out things as though they were cities, like a map. Okay? How does that look? Okay? So again, you're taking one step away from the idea of the tree. Okay? So what this does, so then, what if I combine different colors with it? How does that look? You don't know what your final painting is going to be until you do all this experimenting stuff, and you're open to new ideas. What if I merged it into a shape? How does that change the concept? So I'm taking all of those and I'm putting them all together into a shape. Okay? How does that change the way I look at what I want to express? Is that a clicker? What if the image is reversed, where if it's a white line instead of a black line? How does that affect the way I look at it? Okay? So again, you're not taking the first thing that's at the top of the pile, you're digging down farther. I used to be a creative director in advertising, and we used to have brainstorming meetings, and everybody would come up with the most brilliant ideas right away, because probably they wanted to leave the meeting, you know. So anyway, but what we did is I would make them think of at least 20 or 50 more ideas. We had to have more ideas. So what happens is you start getting silly, you start getting stupid, and your whole ideas begin to evolve into something that's much more creative than what's at the surface. You never want to stop at the surface. Did that change? Yeah. What if that idea became three-dimensional? So now suddenly it's round. That looks like the tree thing. That looks like the city thing. But yet it's still within the same construct. What if I made a bunch of them, attached them? So now my idea of the tree suddenly has changed. You know, I'm not limiting myself to this very limited amount of to the idea of the tree. What if? Did that change? No. What if the form changes shape? How does that affect what I'm doing? So again, you're not so tight against the idea that you originally had. So now you're loosening up your idea a little bit. You're letting other ideas come in. What if people became part of it? What if they walked through it? What if it was projected on them? You know, so again, you're getting more into the, little kind of far out conceptual work. But you're still thinking outside the box. What if I approached it in a more graphic way? So now suddenly that tree has turned into this. Okay? It's more about line, it's more about the fact that it's green there tells me it has something to do with nature maybe, but again, and how do I crop it differently? It's still the concept of the tree. So that's what you call the creative process. Most people don't understand what the creative process is. How can you be creative if you don't know how to do it? I'm hoping that I can go to the next thing here. I might have to call her. Okay. Let's go to the next set of slides. Let's see if this pops up. Okay. Is there something else there? Yeah, there's something else there. I don't know why I keep getting the screen. This isn't how I was hoping. imagination is more important than knowledge. I don't care how much schooling you have or doctorate degrees, I don't care about that. Some of those people are probably some of the worst artists in the world because they're thinking too deeply into it. But imagination is more important than knowledge, just remember that, okay? You want to start loosening up. Now, I would believe Albert Einstein. I think he was a pretty good. The one thing I always hear from people is, I want to be a loose painter. I would say about 90% of the painters out there want to be looser. But nobody loosens up because they don't know how to loosen up. They won't let go.
That's why you're here.
People don't let go. Because there's one little thing that's important in all of this before we start. I'm going to raise up these little things because they're really, really important. This is probably the most important. Art is a process, not a product. What's enjoyable about art is what I just showed you. Thinking it. Not necessarily doing it, but thinking it out and doing it and practicing it and experimenting. And that's the enjoyable part. Now, if you ever watch a kid paint, you don't have to tell them how to paint. They paint because they're loving what they're doing. They're enjoying what's happening in front of them. That is the joy. And adults don't know how to find that joy. It's because you're trying to control it too much. You have to control your painting because it has to be this way. The dog has to have those kind of ears. The eyes are wrong, the tail is wrong, I don't know how to do hair. It goes on and on and on. A kid would just make a picture of a dog, okay? So that's where you want to go back to. You're enjoying what's happening in front of you. And this is the one thing that they asked Pablo Picasso, who was, can't go wrong with Picasso either, is what he enjoyed the most out of his art. And he said the thing that he enjoyed the most was the process. He didn't care how it turned out. He liked going to the studio, just the joy of being in the studio and slopping around and painting. So if you want to be an abstract painter, you've got to start loosening up here. But it's not loosening up just the brush strokes, it's loosening up your thinking, okay? You have to loosen up your thinking because the same processes that go into making this go into that. There is nothing different in my approach when I paint those two things. My process is the same because what I'm doing when I'm painting is I realize that I'm not painting a picture, I'm painting a painting. And everybody out there is trying to paint a picture. And a picture is very limiting because it's already telling you what it has to be. When you approach it the other way, you are working with the painting. You are one with the painting. You're learning and you're seeing what's happening in front of you. You're watching colors mix. You're watching colors that go next to each other. And you're going, wow, I wasn't expecting that. But it's not that I'm going to fight that. I enjoy it because the painting is telling me something. When I was in art school, because you're, 18 years old, the teacher's telling you, listen to your painting, You're going, it's a painting. It's like that, but it takes a long time for people to realize that there is a certain amount of truth to that. You are the partner in the painting. You are not the controller of the painting, because if you try to control your painting, you're never, ever going to be happy. So what you're going to do is you're going to start enjoying the things that are making you happy with the painting. And then there are certain things that you have to realize from that. Everybody has the ability to create art. It's just finding the courage to do it. We don't know. I have taught thousands of students, and they all basically are the same. They're all afraid, they're all this, they're all that. The students who really excel are the ones who just let go of that, who aren't afraid of what somebody's going to say, or aren't following the rules, or following this. So you have to kind of let go of that. Every time you make a new experiment or push ourselves in a new direction, we always learn more. We do not learn less. So why don't you do it? You're going to learn something from your mistakes. I learn more from my mistakes than I do from my successes, because the successes are easy. Some of them I don't even know how it happened. Okay? What happened? I don't go, well, I don't. That part of the painting, that just kind of happened that way, and I'm not taking responsibility for that. No, everybody says, look at my great painting. Yeah. So, people are funny. Okay. So what I wanted to do is I want you to understand the creative process. Okay? How does creativity happen? It is not innately born. You just aren't automatically given that wonderful gift. People always say, oh, you've been given a wonderful gift. No, I worked at that one. I worked hard at that one. So basically what happens is that you identify something that you want to do. Okay? Once you identify what you want to do, which is the subject matter, maybe I want to work with a new material, maybe I don't understand the paper, maybe I want to be better at watercolor, or maybe I want to try different types of watercolor paper. So anyway, then what you do is you start researching. Researching is an important part of painting. It's about looking up things that aren't just in the narrow path of the normal part. You're going off into these little directions like we did at the what ifs. So you're going to start thinking in the what if terms. Okay? And then there's this part that's called the incubation period. Artists just aren't creating constantly. There are times when you have to slow down. You don't even think about it. Maybe you go on vacation. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just, don't do anything. Or maybe you spend the rest of the time just cooking instead of painting. Or you do this because of, but your brain needs a rest. But it doesn't mean you're not thinking. Because there might be something that down the road when you're walking on a walk and you're seeing something, you go, oh, I like that. Well, those are all images you're being put in your brain. You are collecting, and everybody has a visual library in your head. So you're collecting information. It all gets collected. And then there's a moment when you're thinking of going back to painting, you go, but I remember that thing I saw when I went for a walk. And so that could be the incubus of starting something else or doing something, at least getting started. So that's the breakthrough moment. That's when you go, okay, I'm ready. I think I'm going to try this. But then you don't close up your mind. You don't shut your mind up right then, because that's the way it has to be, because this is what I came up with. It doesn't mean that whole process doesn't keep continuing. So you're constantly changing. Painting is more than recording an image. It's a process. You have to remember that it's a process. Okay? You don't know your painting is done until it's done. And it will tell you when it's done. Okay? Some people don't listen to that and they ruin their painting because they didn't listen. Everybody had that. The process that one learns to enjoy and bring into being a personal interaction with the painting. And this is important, these are two little notes here. Don't give things a name. Because the moment you start giving things a name, you start thinking of preconceived ideas of what it is, right? And you're going to think you're not going to go out of the box. What you're going to do is, most artists, I look at them, I don't look at these as trees and all of that, or those are just as lines. I think more in terms of shapes. Shapes, colors, values. That's how you need to start looking at your artwork. And it changes the way you look at it dramatically. So that allows you to go from that to that. Because I'm no longer thinking about an image that is in my head or things that I expect it to be. I'm letting it happen. This does not look, it's similar to what I was painting from, but it's not the exact duplicate. Because what I wanted to do is to make it more foggy. I love the muted greens. You know, some people think those colors are ugly. Well, I personally think they're beautiful, you know. So I did a whole series of foggy paintings. So again, that takes you away from what you're normally thinking of. So, and you're an equal partner in your painting. Okay? You have to listen to your painting. So next time you're painting, you watch it. It'll tell you when you're doing the wrong thing. Okay? It does speak to you. And that's important. And the last one is let go of the control. Just let go. Enjoy the process. Because that's the joyful part. Okay? The end result is not the goal. It's kind of like, you know, hoping your kid is a lawyer and he ends up being a pizza chef. You know? You have to let that go because you're not going to change it. Okay? So you have to go with it. Okay? So I'm going to show you a little bit of my artwork as far as abstraction. And basically, this one was done. This was done with marbles. I had this painting, and I wasn't really liking the direction of it. And I had this little sack of marbles, and I thought, well, what if I just put those in ink and I put them on there and let them roll around? And that's what happened. And I love this painting. And but that took me outside of my box. It's what if? What if I did this? Everybody's afraid of ruining their paintings. You know, who cares? You know, nobody cares. You know, you just have to be thrilled that the garbage guy took it. This is another one that just, again, it's very loose. It's just, you know, I had this little stamper and I had this other stuff to put in there. Part of it's collage, part of it's everything. It's just, you know, but I like the way it ended up feeling at the end, okay? Because I worked through it. There's parts of it I hated, parts about it. If you really love something in your painting, paint over it. That's my rule. Is because you're going to become too married to that part of the painting, and you're going to try to protect that painting more than you should. So if you're absolutely in love with something, cut it up, do something to it, okay? Because that makes you rethink your painting, and it makes you look at your paintings differently, okay?
Was it done in one shot, in one sitting? Was it done in one sitting? All the paintings that you were showing us?
Yes. I like to do them quickly, but I've always had that ability to do it quickly. Even when I was in school, I could do it quickly. But that doesn't mean it has to be done quickly. You know, you work at your own pace, your own, because it's all individual. You're all individuals. You all do things differently. You know. So again, this one, you know, is a lot of scratching. It's a lot of, but there's layers and layers of paint, and I think that abstract art really needs to have more depth to the painting. Some of them don't. You know, I like to see depth where you're actually looking into the painting and sucking you into the painting. So, and there's that one. Is it upside down? Yeah, it's upside down.
Oh, yeah, it's very different. It's very different. Now, what were you thinking when you painted?
I wasn't thinking.
You weren't thinking.
You have to. Number one, I like to put on music that doesn't have words. I like to get into the kind of this space because I'm paying attention to what's happening. You know, I'm just watching the paint move. I'm watching the line. I'm watching the values change. That's the thing I'm looking at. Even when I did that, that's what I was doing here. I was watching what happened when that gray-green was put next to this sky color, you know, or something else is put next to it. That's what I'm watching, you know. I'm reacting to what's happening in front of me. Okay? So, it's not that I'm brain dead. I am. I do.
Is it all oil?
Huh?
Is it oil?
Well, my abstracts are always in acrylics, only because
Ah.
it dries fast, which allows me to really react quickly. If it was oil, I'd have to let it sit, and that gives me time to start overthinking it. You know, so I like to do it more with acrylics.
Mm.
I would suggest using acrylics when you do it, only for that reason. Oh, one more. And so, this was done. I took my acrylic paint, painted it more like a watercolor. I thinned it out, and I thought, what happens if I do that, you know? So I got a totally different feeling that I got from when I was using my acrylics then. So I included that in there only because I liked the way it turned out, you know? But I liked the transparency that was happening, that I wasn't getting with the other, so it's what if. And this was my statement that I don't believe everybody is inherently creative. Creativity has to be nurtured, it has to be brought out, you know. There's reasons why certain people act more creative than others. It's because their thinking is different. You want to rethink your thinking and not controlling everything so much and opening up your mind to new ideas. And that what brings creativity, okay? Because in the advertising world, and you do all that, you'll really discover how narrow-minded everybody is until you really dig down and you get silly and you do all this stupid stuff and suddenly something brilliant happens. And when that happens, it's exciting. That's the most exciting part about creativity, is when that little spark happens. So you want to really open up yourself to that. Now these are the things that I went to a traditional art school. You know, I spent, 8 hours a day just doing new drawings. I spent 8 hours a day just doing very classical things. And I never regretted having that, because when I was in school, it was right when they were ending all that. Suddenly you were supposed to just be creative. But they didn't tell you how to be creative. They didn't tell you what to do to achieve that. You were just supposed to do it, okay? Well, it made no sense to me because I'd already been taught how to structure something. Well, to this day, I am so thankful that I had that education, that structured education. I sent my kid to an art school. I spent a fortune on it. He's not even doing it, But again, the teachers there were saying, I taught him more than they got from the school. They were just saying, oh, just react to it, just be, be free, be free, It doesn't work that way. You have to have a structure. So these are the important parts that everybody should just have little notes on. And this is what gives you, this is what constructs your painting. These are the elements that construct it. This is the building blocks of your painting. So when you're painting, and when you're saying you're just kind of reacting, I'm thinking about all these things. I'm thinking about color and value, I'm thinking about line, I'm thinking about shape, I'm thinking about form, I'm thinking about space and texture. That's what's going to make my painting. Okay? Those are the building blocks. Now when you go beyond that, you're going from the elements into the principles. This is the part everybody's missing, because this is the part that gives your painting the emotion. This is the part that gives your painting and the expression part of it. The contrast between lights and darks, the yin and the yang, the repeated patterns, the emphasis on a certain thing. What is your emphasis? There's so many paintings I see, I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me. Okay? Or the balance, are things balanced? Is it too heavy, too light? Is it, is it even? If it's even, it's boring, you need it to be tipped a little bit, right? So anyway, movement, rhythm, unity. These are the parts that will tell the viewer what you want to tell them. Okay? Your paintings, when you're approaching it, should be more in a narrative fashion. What am I telling my viewer? What is the star of my painting? Who is the main character in my play? You know, that's what you want. And then you work around that, you protect that thing that is the main idea. So, you know, so when you look at these, you know, this isn't necessarily about the trees in the front, it's about the action that's going on in the back. It could be this little part right here. You know, again, what is the most important, what am I trying to tell you? Am I trying to tell you the time of day? Am I trying to tell you the atmosphere? You know, in this one, it's the emotional part. I put in the oranges and the yellows because the rest was so cool. But there is a balance between cool and warm, okay? So, and it's not that the warm has to dominate it, but I needed the warmth in there. So again, you're looking at all these things a little differently. But again, it's based on the elements and the principles of art. I would suggest doing those, tag them up in your studio, and look at those when you're analyzing. I also have this slide, which we're not going to do today, was basically how to criticize your own paintings, how to do a self-critique. And a lot of that self-critique is based on these principles. So again, you're thinking about this constantly. So you're not, when you're painting, you're not doing it mindless, especially in the abstract part, which people think you just swap paint around. No, that's not what you're doing. You're thinking about all these principles. So, and it's a lot harder than you think. So what I want you to do from now on is to think of your studio time or your painting time as play time. It's time to play. It's adult play time, okay? Where you're just going to experiment. Nobody's going to judge it. Nobody's going to say anything. It's just between you and what you're working on. That's the most important part. My paintings are not about exhibiting. My paintings are not about winning awards. My paintings aren't about anything. My paintings are about what I feel at that moment. Okay? And if somebody likes it, fine. If somebody doesn't, I don't care. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even if I didn't like it. If that makes sense. So the best way to have a good idea is to have bunches of ideas. And I hear so many times people go, well, I don't draw. Painting is drawing. Don't use a pencil, use a brush, okay? Draw with a brush, okay? But anyway, the more ideas you come up with, the more compositions you come up with, the more you explore things a little bit more, the more complex your idea is going to become, okay? So, I cannot stress the amount of the importance of just doing simple little sketches. Do not give things a name, ever. Think only in terms of shapes and values, okay? And how they interact with each other. Do not think of the end result. Enjoy the moment that you are in. You are painting a painting and not a picture. If you're painting a picture, then just get your camera and take a picture. Because you're wasting your time. Because even in a realistic painting, you still want to have some emotion to it. How am I going to change it based on what I'm seeing in front of me? You know, what am I going to convey? These are some of my realistic work. I just wanted to show you I can actually do it. These are 2 watercolors. Okay? The one is a full-size sheet of watercolor paper, the other is a little smaller. But again, the same concept that goes into that goes into that. It's the same thing. So whenever I hear people go, well, I only do abstraction, what that tells me is they can't draw, they can't paint. Because they think you just swap paint around, basically. Another watercolor. A big contrast. This is one of my favorite paintings. I love this painting.
So do I.
And basically, the reason I love it is because it has colors in there that most people hate. I call it my hating painting, because it has a lot of grays, a lot of dirty colors, a lot of neutrals in there. I just love wandering around in that, in the mud of the paint. And so, and that's why I like doing it. So, we're going to get a little bit here. This is done with an exciting, and I'm sure most people haven't even done this, it's liquid charcoal. It comes in a little tube, and you take it and you can paint with it like watercolor. And for those of you who don't like to sketch with a pencil, I would suggest getting liquid, charcoal, and just play around with that, because immediately your drawing comes to life. So it's painted more like a watercolor. Okay? So like, let's say you wanted to do a study of something that's easy to do. But what I like is the fact that I used an old brush that allowed me to get some marks. Mine was more about mark making. How do I make a mark with this stuff? How do I experiment with it? So this was just done in my head. Because suddenly it looked like a beach scene, like
Landscape.
Yeah.
and I just love the way it, but that's because I let the painting be the painting. I let it tell me. These are other things that were done in liquid charcoal. The one on the end here is actually done with an eraser. Because I didn't really like it, so I just took an eraser and I started erasing it, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool. Because you have to remember, the act of destruction is probably the most creative thing that you can do. That's why I said, if you like something, destroy it, because it's going to send you another way. And I always tell the story. Some people may have heard this before. I used to give workshops up in Massachusetts, and creativity workshops, where everybody was given a little box of materials, and they were told to do something creative with it. Okay? So everybody thinks more in the traditional term. This one woman in my class took the box, and she said, I'll be back in a little bit. She left with the box, and I'm thinking, why did she leave with the box? Well, she was gone for quite a while. And I thought something happened to her. No, she didn't walk. She no longer had the box. She had something in her hand. What she did is she took the box and she burned it. And she took the ashes from it and she made it into this form. She actually made something three-dimensional out of this box. So that is an enormously creative approach to what she was told to do. Okay? So that just shows you how when you start, that's literally thinking out of the box. You don't have to be that extreme, but I would suggest doing an abstract sketchbook if you're interested in abstract. These are little sketches that I've done that are actually, they're small little paintings, they're all like this, and they're all done quickly. And
what was that medium? Was that your graphite, liquid graphite?
no, that's just black and white. That's black paint, black acrylic paint.
Acrylic.
But again, I was using different tools. This is one that was done with inks. How can I make an abstract with some ink? But again, so what I do is I put all of these in a little notebook, and I don't use these to reproduce them. I use them to inspire me. Okay? Those were all used so when I can't think of something else, I might go through the notebooks and go, oh yeah, I remember that color combination, or I remember those marks I made, or I remember the tools I used. So it kind of brings back some things. And so they're really good things to have. So if you're really serious about doing abstract painting, I would suggest stepping out of the box. And I teach at an art store, and I hate to say this, but don't go to the art store. This is normally what you think of when you think of painting. Okay? This is in the box thinking here. Okay? I'm not saying you shouldn't have brushes. Okay. Home Depot has the cheapest brushes in the world. They cost like $1.98. You can beat them up, you can let them dry, you can do all kinds of stuff to them. You can cut them up, you can do, all kinds of things. So you don't have to feel guilty about destroying a brush. But they make wonderful textures. But this is typical stuff you would use maybe when you're painting, you know. But what you want to do is you want to find things that make interesting marks, interesting things that can happen. Yeah, because I like to scrape into my paintings. Some of those are actually scraped in. Some of the lines get scraped in with a knife.
All those white lines, white lines, like even with this pen deck, it is scraped, right?
Right.
And the paint has to be wet.
No.
It can't dry, right?
Yeah. So basically what I do is I make sure that I have a lot of gesso on my canvas or on the board that I'm doing. I might do 4 or 5 layers of gesso, and not thin layers, thick layers. Then I can, depending on how smooth I want it to be, I can sand it down or I can just leave it rough. But what I like, the reason I like that is because I can take a knife into it and I can just scrape into it. And I get these beautiful lines. I can stain the lines or I can leave them white, you know. So again, it's the act of destruction. What can I do to destroy something that sometimes gives me so much pleasure? And it gets rid of a lot of frustration. But again, these are things that you just have around the house, or you know, like rollers, and, you know. And the secret behind that is you just gather all this stuff. Home Depot is a great place to find out, look for things that make marks. So, so what you do is you don't spend the whole time painting with the brush. I limit myself, my time limit myself to how much time I spend with each instrument that I'm using. Because if you get too involved in one instrument, you're going to just keep doing that and doing that. So your marks become the same. Whereas when you change the instrument, the mark becomes different. And again, you're reacting to it when it's happening in front of you. Because suddenly the instrument has changed. So that takes you away from this common thinking, okay, of the way it's going. It forces you to do something else. So again, you're regenerating your painting because suddenly you're using something that scrapes as opposed to something that smooths something out or something that leaves an indent or something, you know, so you're constantly looking at what's happening in front of you. Okay. Okay. So I would limit the time that you use each instrument, hold and manipulate the tool in a different way. So if you hold the brush this way or this way, hold it another way. Hold it at the end, or hold it at a distance, or tape a stick to it and paint like this, you know. Or I've actually taken a branch from outside and attached the brush to it so that when I moved it, it would move on its own. It was going directions that I wasn't expecting. Okay, it's that unexpected part that makes you think about your painting in a different way. Okay. And use tools that aren't necessarily for artwork. So what you're doing is you're looking for things that make marks. What kind of mark is it going to make? Is it going to scrape? Is it going to smooth? Is it going to do this? You know, actually, for one of the hurricanes, I went for a walk in the park, and then there's these, you know, the big pine trees, and there was these big clumps of pine needles. And so what I did is I grabbed those and I took them and I bound them up. And I actually made brushes out of them. And I love the way they paint because, again, you know, you can take and slap it and make a mark. You go like this, it makes a different mark. So again, you're experimenting with things that, you know, you do. And then this. But this is an important one. This is how we see our world. Okay? So, I'm an old plein air painter. I like to go outside and paint. And again, a plein air painter will go out and he will look at the environment and just paint what's in front of him. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to change my thinking a little bit in that direction, and I'm going to show you little steps in this. These are pictures of, I used to live in Grosse Pointe near Detroit in Michigan. Okay? These are photographs of the land that's vacant in Detroit from above. I think they're beautiful. just from a design standpoint. They're very graphic, they're beautiful. So again, out of something that was destructive, some beauty appeared. Okay? Beauty comes from the act of destruction. Okay? They're beautiful. So again, those kind of inspire me, you know, in a lot of what I do. So again, those are inspirational things. Of course, I think it would show up. There we go. 2 different lots. Okay? So those, I think, are absolutely beautiful. They're beautiful abstractions of nature. Okay? So let's say you go to the beach, and you're thinking about the abstracted nature, the abstraction of nature. So let's say you're taking your paints and you're going to the beach, and this is one thing that, oh, I'm going to paint that you know, building on the beach. Okay, that's just a typical way of looking at it. Okay? Or I'm thinking about the clouds and I'm thinking of the sky. Okay? Oh yeah, that's pretty. I think I'll paint that. So what I would suggest to those who do, or look at, now suddenly I'm noticing something that's happening in the environment. I'm actually seeing some movement, you know, and what's happening there. So that might inspire me. Then as I go along the beach, I'm no longer thinking about that building on the beach. I'm thinking about what's in my environment. I'm thinking about things that are on the sand, things that have been collected from the wash of the water. Okay? Or the pattern that the sea grapes made in the trees. So again, I'm thinking this is as much of the landscape as the landscape. These are the elements in the landscape. These are things that should be inspiring you. So these are, I love sea grape leaves and how they turn different colors and all of that. And sometimes the bugs eat them, and, you know. But again, there's certain parts of what I was doing as I was walking along the beach that struck my eye. So I take a lot of pictures when I do this. So I'm picking things that just, suddenly the yellow just kind of jolted me. And I thought, well, I could put some yellow in there, you know, so. Or the fuzziness of these twigs. They're like little lamb's ears. Those up north know all about lamb's ears. They don't have them down here. But again, it's that silvery gray, which is absolutely beautiful. So, dappled light. You know, everybody walks down the street, but they never pay attention to what's happening beneath their feet. So what all this does is it allows you to begin to see more of the world that you're in. Because the more you can observe, the more you put in your visual library, the more you have resources to pull from. I love doing dappled light in my painting. But most people don't even notice it. Or there can be some mold or something on a tree bark, you know, that can be inspiring. That is just as much nature as the typical landscape. The gnarling of the roots, the collection of seashells that happen to have a little bit of moss on them, you know. To me, that's beautiful. So that's inspiring. These are paintings that were based on that walk. Okay? It's not that I'm going to take each one of those elements and make it into the painting. You know, I'm not doing a photo collage, I'm doing a painting. So basically the things that just inspired me. This was how the sky looked when it was reflected in the water. Okay? This was how it looked on the sandy beach where the water had gathered and the little seashells were, you know, that's all. It's not that it looked like that, it's what I experienced. That's what I made, okay? And I wanted it to be quiet, so I picked quiet colors, the blues and the tan and the, you know, the more neutral colors. This one was rain that was coming down onto the water, or water dripping. So suddenly, you know, I'm inspired by a lot of the Asian artists who do the graphic, Japanese artists who did the rain that went on the water. I just think that's beautiful. And so I incorporated that because it started to rain. There was the little circles, So I wanted to express that. This is just getting the feeling of the rush of the water and the movement of the water. And again, this is, if you can notice, all the white lines were all scraped in there. That's all scraped. Again, this shows you kind of what inspired all of that. And again, these are all paintings that were based on that one is based on what happened here. So again, art is a process, not a product. Okay? So again, just going for a walk can inspire you to do things that are just out of the norm. Okay? So what I want you to do is rethink your thinking. I have one short little thing I want to show you here, because this is also important. We're going over a little bit, but I want to show this to you.
We appreciate your time.
I want to show you kind of the creative process and things that you can do to help you start to thinking a little different way. It's called mind mapping. Mind mapping is when, and we do this a lot in advertising, where you take things that are not related and you connect them, okay? So you're taking these ideas. These are all ideas that have no relationship to each other than maybe a very general theme. Because mind mapping is an important part of the creative process. Again, I want to say, every time man makes a new experiment, he always learns more. So what I'm telling you is that experiment, okay? Because you're going to learn more. Don't do the same old, same old. So the creative process is basically the formation of a what if. This is what a mind map might look like. Okay? This one was based. I did this in a workshop up in Massachusetts where we did a creative mind mapping workshop. And basically, mine was the landscape and the environment, because I'm very concerned about the environment, and I love to garden. I like being out. I like worms. I like worms are my friend. So basically, what I was taking is how, if I thought of the idea of the environment, what would it be? There's renewable energy. There's urban landscape. There's language. What kind of words, talk about the landscape? Things that are man-made. How do they relate to the environment? So I'm taking all these things and looking to see how I can start to think about the environment really different. Okay? So what I did is thinking about linear thinking. So linear thinking is very big like this. You go from A to B to C to D. So basically, what happens if I went along that line and I picked things that existed along that line that had to do with environment? I mean, that takes you from Mexico all the way over to China, along that line. What's happening along there? Or north from South America all the way up to Greenland. How does the environment relate that way? That was one of the thoughts. Or do I go more circular? Because circular thinking is totally different. Okay? So I'm thinking about what's happening within that. What's happening within that certain area. And so I had to start gathering images that meant something to what I was doing. So I found this picture of a tree and I thought, well, it's renewable energy, so I plugged in a tree. Right? So and that's the humor, be silly, okay? So that was part of it. Partnerships with, what is our partnership with the nature? What's our partnership with animals and plants? And, what does that mean to me? So again, you're thinking differently. Urban landscape, this is actually under the Indian Town Bridge. Everybody else painted the intercoastal thing there. I painted the underside of the bridge, okay? So I'm looking at things a little differently. This is enforce environmental control. The property, you want it your way. Not how nature wants it to be or how it's best for nature, but my way, okay? So I was looking at it from that viewpoint. Does it really belong to anybody? Should it belong to anybody? You know, Indians had a great philosophy that the land was belonged to everybody, that there was no ownership, that we're all part of the land, okay? So that brought that up. I did a lot of research into that part of it. I think these words are kind of funny. Ground maintenance, you know, you maintain the ground, okay? You know, plant installation. You can't think of anything more cold than plant installation. I call it gardening, you know? Next time you go to the garden, say, I'm going to do some installation. And see what kind of reaction you get. But I think it's funny, it was in an ad. All of these came from an ad. And just, this one I love, it's just the moss. I lived up in Vermont at the time we did this, and moss grows everywhere, and I just love moss, so I thought that was kind of fun. You know, the way we talk about the atmosphere, it's a revolution, it's a planet, biosphere, recyclable, renewable, you know, all these words that just, what does it really mean, you know? So you're kind of investigating all of it. So people actually went to the task of making something natural look, a man made something look natural. Well, good luck. That's actually a floor tile, okay? So I thought that was kind of absurd, and just, you know, the man-made part of the environment. Taking nature and making it the way we want it, you know, forcing nature to be not necessarily what it wants to be. And then there's cultural and regional preferences of different areas. So these are all areas of research. Contain and control. Those two words don't even, to me, environmentally shouldn't even be used. So they were just reactions. And this was one of my favorites. I found this picture and I called it the earth sickle. Okay? Instead of a popsicle. So again, it's looking at things a little differently. You know, different things that affect the environment. This is actually two artists' view of a storefront. One is that one is actually in the desert out west. It's an empty Prada store. And then this one, they just wiped out the store. Just blocked it out. So I thought both of those were kind of funny. Organic forms, I looked at organic forms. I looked at natural forms. I looked at patterns and colors that might, and so I had all these different pictures of those things, okay? And then different ways people approached it. And then again, this kind of went through the thing we looked at first. So this is how I started to think about all the stuff I had gathered. And I thought a lot about how would I reconstruct the environment if it was up to me. And then I started thinking about what the environment was like and what we're doing to protect it and all this other stuff. So then this became, and so my thought process, I took a map and I cut it and I wove it. I made a woven version of the map. And then I thought about, well, what do we do now? And this was the final product, which is kind of fun. So I took the final product. Underneath is a painting of the environment, of a landscape. And then what I did is I took I took a map of the world and I cut it into little squares. And then I floated them at different levels on wires that went across. Okay? only they were all placed randomly, so it didn't look like the United States, it didn't look like Africa, it didn't look like that. So, and they were layered, so there was like this depth to it. And then this is what I wrote. What a mess we've made. We live our lives in wooden boxes with parallel and perpendiculars, with borders and boundaries, with latitudes and longitudes. We have not left room in our world for the circle or the ellipse, the squiggle or the squiggle or the scribble. And then what a mess we've made of the whole world. Okay? So that's how I saw all this gathering of all this information, and how we look towards what's outside and what's in our environment. I saw more of a mess, but there it is, all scrambled up.
But it's a very organized mess in a way.
It's very organized in a certain way. But again, all of this research forced me to look at it a different way. You know, if I would have just made a landscape, you know, it wouldn't have had any meaning to me, whereas this was really something that was important to me. So that's why that is important to do. That's why the creative process is so important. And to let things happen because they happen, and not trying to force it to be what it's not. Okay? So remember these things. These are the most important. This is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy it. I can't tell you how many times people just are miserable painting, and I'm thinking, why are you even doing this? You know, but they have to. Okay? Well, then make it joyful, because out of the joy is going to sound something much better than something where you're constantly saying, I can't do this, I'm not very good at this, I will never be able to do this, and you're never going to be able to do it because you just said it. No one's forcing you to do it. You know? So you want to just find joy in it. Go watch kids paint. That's one of the most beautiful things in the world, is to set up a table with some paint on it. You know, I'll set it up and the adults come and they stand there and they go like this. They just look. A kid wouldn't do that. The kid would start brushing and painting. That's how you should approach your art. The more you do that, you know, and you're not thinking about what's right or wrong, or how it should be, or how it's going to be, or I gotta have this, and this has to become the masterpiece. This is the masterpiece. There is no such thing as a masterpiece. And believe me, I painted enough paintings to know that. You know, it doesn't matter if it's the masterpiece. It's the joy you get out of doing it.
I guess, would it apply also when you do commissions?
And a commission?
I mean,
I don't do commissions because I hate commissions.
okay, because all those elements wouldn't probably apply.
Because I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for someone else, and that's not the point. It's not why I do it, you know. I just don't like doing them. I've done them in the past, and I just found them to be torturous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to.
I agree.
You're living under someone else's expectations. But again, a lot of people are just doing that themselves by the way you're approaching your art. Is the limitations and the expectations you are placing on that particular work. And that's freezing you up. So you have to, every painting you just approach, well, this is going to be a great painting today. Maybe not. If it doesn't, who cares? You know, just move on. So that's important. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what's on the last one that's turned down?
This one? Well, actually, I'm doing a trip to Spain, if anybody's interested. I'm taking a group to Spain, so if you're interested, just, you know, you can write your name and stuff like that. And we're going to Costa Brava, which is a really beautiful part of Spain.
But it is landscape, really. I would go with that would be abstract.
You can do abstracts anywhere. It doesn't say here what kind of painting you're going to do. right? You've already made a presumption that is not correct. So, there's nothing in here that says it has to be watercolor. There's nothing here that says it has to be oil. There's nothing here that says any of that. It is I'm taking people to go paint. Because what I teach is how to enjoy what's in front of you. How you approach what's in front of you. Okay? Because that's the important part. And you know, you don't go on a trip to produce the greatest painting you've ever made. You know, you go to become inspired and just to experience. The more you experience, the more you learn. You know, so it's fun. So anyway, I wanted to share that just in case anybody's interested. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now you have to go out and do it.
Exactly.
That's the hard part. So if you'd like any information, if you want to put your name and email on here, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I'll stop.
So do you paint?
Mm-hmm.
What do you paint?
Mostly watercolors, but I do like stone carving and all kinds of things.
Oh, cool. Cool. No, the more things you can do, the better, because you can actually relate to each other.
I went into a consultant one time, we had a free session, and that's the one thing I said. I said, you know, I bounce around and do all these things because it's fun. And I said, am I going about it wrong? Should I be focusing? She said, no, they're all tools. Everything you said really hit. It was good.
No, people want to know what brush should I use. Well, I don't know. Use a brush. You know, you don't know unless you've used one. You know, so people always want the right answer, and that doesn't happen in art. You know, experimentation is the most important part of just letting happen.
Or showing up.
Or what?
Showing up
Showing up.
is
Showing
important.
up.
It's important.
The most important part is the act of doing. Okay? It's not what's resulted from the doing, but it's the act of doing. That's where you learn. And once you learn to relax a little bit more about it, the more you will learn.
Do you always use gesso before you start to paint?
No.
Do you cover gesso?
Well, I do a lot on board. Like that's done on a MDF board. I do some on canvas, each for a different reason, because the canvas has more give. Sometimes I like that, but also I like to have the MDF board because I gesso the hell out of it. And then because I can scrape, I can get a sander, just sand the hell out of it to see what's going to come up from underneath. So, you know, you're just not painting with a brush. I taught at the Boca Museum School of Art for a while, and there was a woman who taught abstract work there, and she was quite a character, but she used to bring her sander, not a little sander, her sander, and she would take that, she would just go over that painting, you know, and what happened is that the painting layers underneath would come out. So she was getting this whole different thing that was happening, so it's kind of like unearthing something that was underneath, you know. So again, it's whatever.
Well, I am asking because I like those white lines that you, that in many of your paintings made really, for me, it made the painting. How do you accomplish this? Just by scraping and
I will take like a
canvas?
utility knife and I'll just
Scraping, and you see the canvas.
Or I take other
color.
things that make marks and scrape.
I want to take a picture. Can I just take a picture of your street info so I can get back
Oh, this?
to you?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring, oh, I have some cards for you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Okay.
really fun.
You done it before?
Oh, yeah.
Like this street, same place?
I used to do a bunch of, well, the last one was in Italy,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, France, Italy, wherever.
That'd be
So-
fun. I've got a friend who, I don't have
Thank you.
money, but I have a friend who does, and she might tell her about
Sure.
this.
Just in case you.
Thank
And
you.
and you, feel free to email me if you want with a question or anything.
I guess your website will show, your class or when
I'll send you some.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it includes flight. I think it's not flight to the Spain.
I did one other class. He talked a lot about having the dialogue with your painting. His name was Joe Brescia from Montana. Yeah, you probably don't have any knowledge of him, but it's interesting, the parallel.
Did you want to sign this first?
Okay, so you know what
I haven't seen it yet either.
got myself into, and like all of a sudden I'm hating it. I should claim my piece, like someone will say, I want that. And I'm like, I don't want it until the original. And how do you price the original? So it's another thing. So, John, I started at 15,000. That's hard. That's hard. But anyway,
Sure.
the Giclée, I go to Jupiter Eminence Studios. You know them? They're wonderful.
Yeah, that'd be great, you guys.
Yeah, but it's like, I have this big Giclée and I kind of froze last night going like, you know, they want me to reproduce something that I'm doing. And that's really hard. Because I was doing it, you know, 2 years ago I was in a different head. And now it's hard. I'm thinking of stopping doing that. Because it's like commissions. You know, they have an idea.
Yeah, well, that's different than you have to do what they want, because you've already done it. They're
Right.
choosing you.
Right,
But-
so I embellish it, but
yeah.
yeah, I'm getting like, and now I'm understanding why I wasn't understanding.
Don't get yourself tied up in a knot and all that.
I know.
If something doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Well, they already paid me, so I have to like finish it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to make it and then make a Giclée?
No, it's a piece I have in the house, and they sort of Giclée it at M&M, and they gave me, you know,
Right.
half.
Right.
Respecting things. But yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful.
I'd like to know when do you open your studio?
Hmm?
I'd like to know when you will open your studio.
Your name is here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you will get it. You'll get a notice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.